I was surprised to discover that I was not looking forward to these visits. Another member of our group was outright scared. Nevertheless, we entered through the buzzed gate, made our way down the beige path to the courtyard, where the flowers were kept in daily bloom by a team of gardeners. People smiled at us along the way. And often she was already there. Although at times we would arrive to find that she was sleeping, we would wait a bit in a room, and then wheel her out through the double doors to that same flowered courtyard. I remember the first time I saw her in this wing, it was bizarre. I had raced to get a little time together, and we sat in half conversation and spoke like any two people. But there was something already missing. I never identified myself. I didn't want to embarrass her. But there were certainly times that she didn't know who I was. By the time we were meeting in the courtyard, most of her speech was gone, and I would sit and hold her hand. But what I really wanted to say was, do you remember the big living room with the white carpet and the candy dish? When we made pancakes and drove an hour to play games under the Pharaoh sculpture. I did learn some things about her in those last years. She loved chocolate. And some things did stay the same. She never woke up before 10. But it was strange. And even hurtful in a way that I can't quite point a finger to. That here she was in body, but that in every other way she was gone. Like in purgatory on her way to the next step. What happened to all those moments that we shared together and all the times that I wasn't there? The car trips with bouncing boys assembled across the back seat. The house spinning with children playing games and watching TV, or the quiet dates with friends. Sharing the anxieties and obstacles of life. Challenges that were all-consuming and today also faded into the broad fabric of the past. What happens to those moments? Those memories that aren't lucky enough to be recorded on video or dropped into a book. I even feel my own anxiety as I think about them disappearing, wanting them to be permanent, but knowing that the volume is simply too much for any medium. No matter how many ways we record memories, there's always a sense of pain and anxiety about the passage of time and the things left behind in it. And so it was strange to sit together in these moments like walking up to a friend on the street only to tap their shoulder and have to apologize to a stranger that you thought they were someone else. Shocking to be with someone you know so well and learn that the same recognition is not shared by them. The shell of a person looking at me, searching for recognition while I did the same, hoping that some glimmer of herself would come through in the haze of dementia. During this longer death, it can be hard to point out exactly when the final moment of your relationship has changed from mutual to memory. And these visits taught me something profound about the difference between clinging to what's gone and preserving what endures. And I think that this tension is being felt in our entire country right now. In the United States today, there is a painful yearning for a time that has come and gone. And like losing a loved one, letting go can be unbearably painful. There is no returning to the past. And while we can look to it for lessons, aspirational and tragic, it's a painful exercise to try and recreate what has already passed by. What we have instead is a shell of a country, with people at various ends of the political spectrum fighting to restore the past while history presses us forward. It's not possible to return, but it is possible to experience a great deal of pain trying to get us back there. I believe it's time to mourn what is past, what's no longer. News has changed. Etiquette has changed. Family structures have changed, and so have racial lines. And the country is different. It's time to let go, as painful as that may be. It's only through this that we can start to imagine what we might someday grow into. And so I'd like to review perhaps some of how we got here. One reason why we might be having so much trouble letting go of this past, and how we might responsibly move into the future. According to usage statistics, we browse the internet and check social media feeds more than any other activity on our phones. Now, I actually remember the very early days of the internet, although some of you may not think that I do. These early days when we used a wagon to brave the trail to the west. No, wasn't that long ago. But there was an ironic privacy to the space. Even though the information posted onto websites was publicly available, the web wasn't organized the way it is today. So if you didn't have a specific address, almost like a password or the location of a speakeasy, complete with the appropriate knock, you weren't going to find someone's personal live journal or blogger posts. And so authors would sketch out fairly detailed private concerns and episodes with the freedom that they would be anonymously received, like a secular confessional. As the user base grew beyond a handful of early adopters to people pushing well beyond their 10 free hours of America Online, these private spaces became vastly more public. And then there was a question of what to do with these private missives. Suddenly everything was not only public, it was permanent. And other platforms rose with the goal of helping people record their lives and intentionally share them more broadly. Went to the park today, the dog caught a squirrel, ate some avocado toast. And then a filtered photo of Rufus and the hipster snack. I think over time, though, we started to rely on these platforms to help us remember. The dream realized. Suddenly, nothing needed to be forgotten, but that's not what happened. Studies that have been replicated time and time again are now starting to show that over time, our social media use has actually physically shortened our memories. Perhaps we haven't noticed because we have an endless repository on the internet, terabytes of photos and texts and information about each and every one of us in this room. But it turns out that with the perfect memory of the internet, things are still forgotten. And to hope that algorithms will remember for us and bring up the right memory, a year ago today photos or past posts is deeply problematic. Algorithms are more concerned with keeping us watching than the ethical and moral needs of individuals and society. The nostalgic launch to the past is simultaneously a comforting and a disconcerting exercise, feeling the company of better days in the past and knowing also that they've already gone. But how many of us would not have wanted to revisit some idealized time before our own or relive a perfect day we remember with fondness? Clearly, the things in the past need to be documented, but we've entrusted companies and platforms to remember who have no interest in our individual and societal well-being. I'd like to think these platforms are indifferent, but with that much power. Every small touch moves continents, and our world has dramatically changed since the internet's early days, and for so many of us, with great concern. It turns out the platform with which we remember matters greatly. And as Jews, we've been remembering for a long time. Somewhere between the last words of Genesis and the first of Exodus, the Israelites begin to lose themselves. Fully acculturated into Egypt, one of their own seated as second in command of the entire empire, over time they forget who they are. The text goes so far as to say that even God forgets the Israelites. And in the fundamental story of our community, the villain behind the antagonist is memory. As we read, quote, "A new ruler arose over Egypt who simply didn't remember Joseph." And they become slaves because forgetting can be taken advantage of. And the lack of memory becomes a lack of identity that spirals into oppression, and rulers quick to take advantage of the opportunity. Over time, the Israelites, they reach rock bottom, their children killed. They wage a hard-fought revolution. Finally free, the Israelites charge themselves with protecting future generations from the same fate. And they devise a system. The story of our Exodus emerges with a set of rituals and practices so that they won't forget again, including retelling the story itself. I think the Jewish community found itself in that moment. Not just learning a protective practice designed to keep them safe, but also establishing the vocation of their religiosity. And still today, Judaism is, at its core, a sophisticated way of remembering. We know this also from the inverse. When someone drifts away from Judaism, it's often not because their gene pool or geography has caused them to lose the identity possibly ingrained for millennia in their families. It's often because they don't remember what was known by the ancestors who carried it up to that point. And if a person regains interest in their Judaism, that connection often begins with an introduction to the collective memory. This is simply who we are. And while I doubt anyone was trying to make sure they picked up eggs at the grocery store 4,000 years ago, there were certainly moments after the Exodus as well, when everyone looked at each other and said simply, we have to remember this. More tragedies fearful of being repeated, great victories that needed many seasons to celebrate them. And for these people, they couldn't just pull out their phones and say, hey Siri, remind me in 6 months or a year, don't do this again. Instead, they had other indicators. They could look up at the sky and read the temporal map of the stars. They felt the chill and burn of the seasons, and they were reminded and set holidays around them. Over the course of time, technologies have come and gone, but the charge of the seasons, the touch of the turning weather, and celestial icons have remained, and so the things attached to them have survived. Even as our people have shifted countries, changed languages and customs, our calendar has held us steady to an ethical framework. These things have helped us remember. And some are embedded even more deeply, more timeless than the stars. During my visits to the courtyard, I would sometimes slip my guitar out of its case, tune, and then strum cowboy chords or chunky jazz harmonies, singing softly to her and the rest of the small assembly by the kept garden. Often at the end of life, when someone is distant, even nonverbal, the music sparks something. It lifts their soul back up to their body and they change. Some will turn to the music, drone with tired voice, or even when their own names are a complete mystery, shape the words and melody from that same desolate memory. She would often do the same. Turn to me with recognition and excitement as the songs brought back something timeless. We've seen this before. We are a community that has weathered the ups and downs of countless nations and empires. We've endured difficult times and celebrated great ones as well. And the Jews of Persia in the year 400 sang the same prayers we sing today. As if a letter sent to us from those who came before, the memory opens up in new mouths, and we offer our same music to the world changing around us. There is no way to know what new challenges will come up with new generations, what new concerns the world will face, and how societal circumstances will adapt to new realities, but the instruments and tools that will help us move through these challenges successfully have not changed. Our stories, our calendar, our prayer. And that is, of course, what we're doing today. Telling our stories, taking a day in our calendar to reflect and even sing the same prayers as our ancestors to a power far greater than any individual. The spiritual task of building a better world hasn't changed. And this is how we remember the important things. One more thing. When a person is stripped of their memories, floating on the last days before a great change, unaware of where they are and who they are, what remains is the chance of personality. It's perfectly understandable to reach this stage of life and express the fear, frustration, and confusion with anger. That's human. But there's a special gift when someone comes to this time of life, if they do, and what comes up from underneath the polish of societal expectation and learned etiquette is a kind and caring soul. The sheen has come off in our country today. The niceties and careful political speech have been torn away, and as we move forward to whatever will follow, we have an instance to see what is revealed without the constraints of previous social norms. And we have an opportunity. Without the pressure to act a certain way to one another, we can choose how to instead. May we embody kindness. As we look ahead to whatever this future may bring, we can lead the way, remembering and steadfast with our highest values and sharing a bit of kindness in a world so far removed from it. Shanah Tovah.